Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about this Haslab Giant Man situation, and it's going to be very rambly, and I'm not going to edit a lot out because I just kind of want to get it out. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Haslab is Hasbro's crowdfunding service that they do, where they announce usually a big figure or a spaceship, in the case of Star Wars or whatever. It's to fund a bunch of things. Some projects are very successful, like the Marvel Legends Sentinel or the Marvel Legends Galactus, and then some are not, like the Marvel Legends Engine of Vengeance. If they don't get backed, they're not getting made. That's bottom line. And Hasbro had a pretty steady train with the Sentinel, then Galactus. It seemed like, oh, they cannot lose. And then when the Engine of Vengeance happened, they lost. We need to do better, boys. We can't F up like this again. So let's do a figure that's guaranteed to back, no matter what. An easy sell. And it turns out maybe it's not as easy as they think it's gonna be. I felt like Giant Man was a very guaranteed success because A, it's a character that needed an upgrade for a long time. A lot of people will say that you didn't need an upgrade for Giant Man, but let's be honest, that Toy Biz one is not great. I don't care if you think it's good. A lot of Toy Biz figures look so weird. Just in general, I feel like this Giant Man is a billion times better than that old one. And also, he's way bigger. He's actually giant this time around, not just oversized, I guess. Not only that, the boys came in clutch with the price sitting at a solid $200. Before shipping. Now that honestly was the craziest part of the reveal. When they actually revealed this guy, that was the thing that made me go, oh my god. People thought it was gonna be like $300. I myself was betting $250, somewhere around there. But $200 is more than reasonable. Now it makes sense, there's no electronics in him, he's much simpler than the Sentinel or Galactus. He doesn't have as much greebly design text work, so that made sense, I guess. The articulation on this guy is amazing looking. So much so that I backed it. I didn't back it day 1, or day 2, or day 3. Honestly, I didn't back it till a while into the campaign. I was talking with some buddies and they're like, this is something you wanted. Because I'm kind of a big Ant-Man fan. Now, I don't read comic books. When I say I'm an Ant-Man fan, I specifically mean I'm a fan of Scott Lang from the MCU. This is not Scott Lang or the MCU adjacent at all. It is comic book, and it is Hank Pym. There's things I like about Ant-Man, just in general. If you give me a classic Ant-Man, I'm gonna eat that shit up. I've still been trying to get my hands on that classic Ant-Man figure, and I cannot find it for the life of me. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just like Ant-Man adjacent things, I suppose. So I backed him. And I was pretty sure this was going to be a pretty smooth Haslab, but it hasn't funded yet. And I'll admit, it does have me a little shaky in my boots. Now, I know I'm making this video a little bit late, and I apologize for that, but I just had to talk about Giant Man. I mean, truthfully, I do think this is one of Hasbro's best Haslabs, hands down. Though I will admit the tier system is something that I think a lot of people are hung up about, which is maybe what the main reason why it hasn't funded right away. With the Engine of Vengeance, they relied way too heavily on including figures as tiers, and people weren't happy about that. People were pretty disappointed about that at the time. So I figured their direction to move away from tiers would actually help this, but it actually isn't. People are genuinely mad about the figure thing, even though that's a thing that they complained about with the Engine of Vengeance. And I know some people are gonna be like, no, we complained about the Engine of Vengeance because the price, and who wants to pay that much money for a car? And those were also factors leading into it. But I genuinely remember people being mad, like, really? These figures are locked behind the car? That's so stupid. I actually really do respect Hasbro's decision to focus less on including extra figures. Only 2 tiers, that being a zombie head and a Skrull head. And admittedly, those are cool. But they feel like bonuses. They don't feel like necessities, you know, which I actually really like. I prefer when the tiers are something that aids the figure and not so much as just an incentive to buy the figure. You know, like I liked Galactus and the way how he was all handled, but I kind of wish there was more like cosmic effects or just more things dedicated to Galactus instead of other heralds. Which I know no one else agrees with that point. I know I'm alone on that. And I think Giant Man comes with everything he should. The faceplate swappability is perfect. He's gonna have an eye system, which they added after the fact, which is so cool. Not to mention they added white antenna, which is awesome. They didn't have to do that at all. But seeing that, it just makes it, just those little tweaks was enough to be like, okay, that's dope as hell. They also revealed a Wasp figure, and when I saw it pop up on my Instagram, I was like, oh, they're totally including a Wasp. That's awesome. That wasn't the case. They're just like, oh, we're gonna put out a Wasp sometime next year, so why don't you back that Giant Man? Which I'll admit, they probably should have just thrown it in. I mean, it seems scummy. I'm glad they're not going back on their word, but if they did it, it would probably help. It sounds terrible, admittedly, but I'm selfish and I just want this thing to fund no matter what. If you don't see the value in it, I totally get it, but you kind of need to accept the fact that Legends are ridiculously expensive nowadays. That's just not a world that we can't live in at this point. They're so expensive. I'm pretty sure a 5-pack of Marvel Legends is like, what, 120, 140, somewhere in that range. So yeah, no, prices are bad, okay? This is not the greatest price ever. I'm not even coming close to saying that's the truth, because it's not. I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, for some people, that's way too much. I feel like it's honestly a really fair price, all things considered. And that's also helped by the fact that he doesn't have any stupid electronic gimmicks, which he did not need. If they forced that in, I would be very disappointed. That way they can keep the price down. He's just a big man, and in my opinion, that's great. There are a lot of people who are saying, why not just sell this in store? You'd make way more money. No, they wouldn't. That's not how that works. You realize that when they stock a product in store, they have to make a certain amount to meet buyers' demand, so they can't put out too little or else there's a shortage in everything and you can't buy it. They can't put out too much or else there's way too much overstock. And for something as big and expensive as that, that does not work very well. For people saying it'd be a good bath, it's too big for a bath. You need to readjust the way that baths are done, throw it in a different box. It just doesn't work out the way people want it to work out. You have to have some understanding of how this works. You can't live in Fantasyland and be like, they should just put it out on shelves. They should just like buy it so I can buy it. Like, it's not gonna sell because of this crowdfunding situation. It's not gonna sell. If you put it out at Target, it would sell way more copies. It's like, maybe, but also not the average collector isn't gonna drop $200+ on a Giant Man sitting at Target. Where are they gonna have the shelf space for that box? And it just doesn't make any sense, logistically speaking. And that's not a thing that I ever do. I'm not a logistical guy, okay? But when it comes to this, it's a point that I see brought up all the time, and I despise it because people don't understand how the world works, I think. At this point, I'm rambling on. I really don't have too much to say. If you wanna back it, back it. If you don't wanna back it, don't back it. Obviously, this isn't targeted towards my audience. This is targeted towards a Marvel Legends. If you're into Marvel Legends and you're watching this, if you're even considering backing Giant Man, please back Giant Man. I'm begging you. It needs to happen. We need to show that this is a much needed improvement as opposed to the previous Haslab. This is an improvement. I don't want people to say, I'm not supporting Hasbro and they're greedy. So just do it. This project has been going so slow and it is eating me away. I've backed it. I want to know if I'm gonna get it. I want my toy and I want it now. Truthfully, I do really hope it funds. Not as just someone who backed it, but as someone who wants more successful projects like this in the future. If this doesn't back, this could be it for a while. That sounds bleak, but I could see Marvel Legends being like, oh, these things aren't funding, so what's the point in putting all this money into advertisement and getting the prototype ready if we're not gonna make these things? So they might take a break or they might stop. That's probably not gonna happen because Marvel is one of Hasbro's biggest brands, so they're gonna keep making stuff. I don't care what you say about price. It's not great, but it's definitely not the worst it could have been. It's a million times better than a shitty light-up car that costs $350. Alright, as of right now, we're sitting at 7,101 backers. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We've got 2 days, 2 hours, and 37 minutes left. We could make it. It's gonna be real tight. It's not gonna be a landslide, but I feel like we're closer than we're not. If this video encourages you whatsoever to back Giant Man, I will be so happy. Now, it's not. I'm not gonna have enough of a reach. I'm not in the community. I hope this reaches somebody. I hope you see this and go, okay, I'll do it. So yeah, please back Giant Man. I apologize, things have been quiet on the video front. I have been working on something. It's a pretty big project. It's not what you want it to be, unfortunately, but it is something that I am putting a lot of my work into. A ton of videos have been pushed off the back burner, and I apologize about that, but I'm putting my foot down. I'm making this really quickly and getting right back to that. So, Hopefully more news to come about what that is. Hopefully you guys will be watching that video soon enough. Alright, goodbye ladies and gentlemen.
Hey bitch, back me already! Yeah!